Start recording. Fab. Welcome, everybody. We're talking this afternoon about raising expectations without breaking morale. And I ran this session in a networking event for a group of people probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, maybe even longer than that, and had really good feedback on the session. And had quite a lot of people, I posted about it on LinkedIn afterwards, quite a lot of people contacted me and said, "Oh, I'm gutted I didn't get an opportunity to see that." A couple of people said, "Could I have a copy of the slide deck?" The slide deck doesn't cut it. So I thought I'd run it as a standalone session. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming along, taking the time to join me. You will get a copy of the recording after the session. So you can go back and have a look at bits again if you want to. Or at least one person, two people, I think this morning have said that they may have to jump off part way through. So again, don't worry about that. You'll get the rest of the recording. Just take a note of where you were up to, what time you perhaps had to duck out, and then pick it up from there when the recording comes through. And I'll get that recording through to you before the end of the day. So I've taken what we're talking about today out of the program that I run with clients. So I will take a little bit of time at the end to talk to you in more detail about that. But in the meantime, I'd love you to tell each other who you are and where you're based and what you do if you're comfortable doing that. But I would also love to hear from you one expectation that you'd like to raise the bar on in your business at the minute. You don't have to put loads of detail about it, but what kind of expectation is it that you need to raise the bar on? And I know that we've got people from a variety of different industry sectors. Quite a lot of you know me from a previous life in the recruitment industry, or I've worked with you as a recruitment client. But there's quite a lot of different industry sectors, so it'll be interesting to see what comes up in those different areas. And I'm just going to pop my chat over onto this screen. So if I'm looking over here, it's because I'm looking at the chat. And I'll come back to what people have said in a few minutes. Tell you a little about me. So most of you know me, but I'm Briony Platt, fairly obviously. I run a training business called Lean Into Learning. I've spent over 25 years in the recruitment industry, working in a variety of industry sectors myself, managing teams within a couple of different industry sectors. And then the businesses that I worked for had different areas of focus. And then over the last 3 years, with Lean Into Learning, I've worked with a broad range of clients across quite a variety of different industry sectors. So the last 15 years of my time, I've spent working as what I'd call some form of learning and development business partner to leaders and business owners. Whether that's been internally, whether it's been in the head of learning and development role that I did most recently in my employed work, and over the last few years as an external person coming in and supporting businesses. And I consider my superpower to be increasing the capability and confidence of managers and leaders in a variety of different guises. We've got We've got Steph being brave so far. We've got another one. I was going to say there's only Steph being brave and telling us who she is and what she wants to raise the bar on. And Steph, you're saying looking to move away from a traditional management culture, but need the managers to take ownership. Yeah, and that's not uncommon. Looking to raise expectations on pace. Yeah, so perhaps it's that the quality of work is fine, the standard of it just needs to be done faster, so more gets done, is kind of how I'm interpreting that, Jess. Any more for any more? Do we get three at least? Let's see. Maybe some of you are putting more detail into it and it'll just take a bit longer. And Matt's saying different stages of building desks in the recruitment industry. So we need to make sure we're all doing what we can for each of our desks. Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And it's just kind of turning the dial a little bit, isn't it? So turning the dial up. So you've got that. We've done that stage. Let's scale that a little bit more. Let's increase what's coming from it. And this is why it was taking a little bit longer for some because there's some more detailed ones coming through as well. So new way of working, raising expectations post-COVID. You're certainly not the first business that said something like that to me. My husband's business is going through something similar at the minute as well. And wanted the team to kick on again, not resting on laurels. Nice, good. So it's a broad range of different things, and I think there are different things that different people will take away from what we're talking through. So this is what I wanted to cover with you. Fairly ambitious for the time that we've got, so we'll move through at a relatively good pace. So if you've got the recording, it allows you to come back and dig back into some of the bits that you perhaps want to have another watch of. So we're going to look at why expectations actually matter in the first place and why morale can drop when we try to raise expectations. I see three really common traps that leaders fall into on a regular basis. So I want to flag those to you, see if any of those sound familiar to you. I want to talk you through a simple communication lens for any kind of leadership, and then the support and challenge balance. And again, I refer to this quite a lot through the leadership program that I do, so I'll make more sense of that. And then we're talking about raising expectations. We're talking about a particular context where you've got a layer or a level of expectations already in place, but we need to raise that with some reasoning behind it. And I'll talk you through a simple framework for doing that well. Having said that, you may still get some pushback, but pushback is great because it's feedback. It allows you to look at what have you still perhaps not done quite as tightly enough, what needs reiterating, what needs re-emphasizing, to still get done what you need to be done without breaking morale in that team, without people being disappointed, frustrated, disengaged, etc. All those things that as leaders we just do not want. And then towards the end, I'm just going to talk you through briefly how I can support. So that's the plan. I wanted to also put a couple of quotes in here that back up what we're talking about today. So from the infamous Tony Robbins, people will rise to the level of expectation that you set for them. And then from Patrick Lencioni, he's the writer, the author of The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, which some of you may have read. If you haven't, it's a good read. It's written as a story as opposed to a textbook. So I think that that can make a difference sometimes when you're having a read of something. There's lots of lessons and messages in there without it feeling as though it's too hard work as you're going through. So his quote, when expectations are unclear, accountability becomes unfair. And I think we have to kind of take that message on board too. So I'm keen to hear from you. When you've raised expectations before, I want you to think about what's actually been hardest. Has it been the pushback that maybe you've anticipated or you've got? So if you're saying pushback, I'd love to hear from you as to whether it was actual pushback or just you were worried about the pushback. Perhaps there was a dip in morale, and that's been the hard thing about it, and perhaps makes you a little bit anxious, reluctant, resistant to do it again. Inconsistency, staying firm with it. So people have come back and pushed back, and it's just kind of standing your ground with it. Has that been what's been difficult? What's been hardest? And then if something that you're thinking of doesn't fit the bill of any of those other things, put other, but tell us what it is. So let's hear from you. Just pop it into chat. Um, was it pushback? Was it a morale dip? Was it inconsistency in it? Was it that having to stay firm once you've passed the message on? Or is there something else that's been challenging or the hardest thing for you previously? Oh, that's an interesting one. Kerry, are you willing to come off mute and tell me what you mean by it?
Of course.
Talk to me. So you're saying evidence to support the messaging.
Yeah, so I think setting expectations and raising expectations. I work in a really small business,
Mm.
and we have lots of different people doing different things. And so trying to stay away from the like, in my day, this is
Yeah,
what worked. Like the landscape is different. We all work hybrid now. I'm
yeah,
at a different stage to the people in my team. So
yeah,
saying, if you do these things, this will work. There's no evidence of that. And there's
yeah,
also no working in a smaller business. I obviously know you from a bigger business that we all worked in where there
yeah,
was like a real funnel. So you just bought into that. Where you don't have that, and also the landscape has completely changed. So what I'm asking my team to do, they're
yeah,
not going to get the same results as I did. So I think that's really difficult. I think we're still trying to work out what KPI should look like and what outcomes should look like and what works in
yeah,
this day and age. How do we get
yeah,
somebody in 2025 to do what I learned to do in 2010?
yeah. And at times that's not a straight black and white, this is how you do it. It's let's give this a try. This has worked in the past in a different context, but let's give it a try. Let's see what happens if we try that now. Let's see what happens if we push that now. Um, let's approach it with a what if that was going to work attitude as opposed to, that's not going to work because it's different now. So it might just be a slant on the messaging that you need as opposed to anything bigger than that. But that's an interesting one. Quite willing to pick up that conversation with you at a separate time if you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. That'd be great.
fab. Peter, I like the fact that you're just giving us a whole range of different things, different things that have happened. What's been the hardest? So what's been the most challenging thing with it?
Um,
Um,
Possibly getting the energy back from those that you're raising the expectations with. So
Yeah,
you'll probably notice I didn't put A, but I put B, C, and D, B, C, D, and E. So
yeah,
there's a lot of heads nodding and what seems like engagement, but the energy doesn't come back.
yeah,
Or maybe the energy's there, but it's only there for a short period of time, and then maybe there's a morale dip, or the inconsistency, or
yeah,
we're not as a group staying firm. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, maybe that
Okay.
kind of signals towards deeper kind of challenges. But yeah, it's trying to get that
Yeah. And I know your business
yeah.
quite well, so whereas I wouldn't naturally go into fixing mode with some, I can imagine some of the things that perhaps are going on with your team and the kind of conversations that are happening. And I think there's stuff in what I'm going to talk through that might, I'm confident there's things that I'm going to talk through that will help you with some of that. And if you look at them objectively, some things that you'll potentially be able to spot that might not be strong enough or have been missing in what's been done so far. So I'd be interested to see afterwards. And perhaps drop me an email afterwards to give me an idea of what were your kind of takeaways from it. So some inconsistency, verbal rather than formal comms, and sometimes we have to do the verbal comms in my mind comes first, and then we back it up with something in writing that we can refer to should we need to, and lack of measurement on it. Um, and pushback, but only from certain characters, perhaps. Inconsistency seems to be quite common, slipping back into old ways. So there's a mixture of different things, and that makes sense because different things will be happening in different businesses and with different messages that have had to be communicated, different requirements that have had to be communicated. Um, but I wanted you to think about it from your own perspective so you can apply that as I'm talking through some of the other stuff that we'll cover. So I wanted to give you a quick example. This is Mark. Mark is a real person, but this isn't his picture or his real name. But it's a real person that I'm basing it on. It's looking a bit like I put him into witness protection or something like that, to be fair to him. But he's a friend of mine that I was talking to a little while ago about some issues that he was having in his team. And to a degree, it prompted the original webinar that I did earlier on in the year. So he was talking to me about the team that he leads. It's a capable team. And on the surface, he said, if he looks at last year, certainly things were looking fine. So deadlines were being met. They didn't really have any complaints coming through from clients. Everybody was busy most of the time, but he knew that the standard of what was being produced by the team wasn't quite where it needed to be for the business. And he recognised that because there were some bits of work that needed redoing, the follow-ups were a bit patchy, and he kept stepping in to fix things and knew that he was spending quite a lot of his time doing that. And he was doing it because he didn't want to break morale, because he knew that the team had been under pressure. He knew he'd been asking more of them. As with all of your businesses, costs going up, employee costs going up, the cost of your buildings going up, the cost of products and tech and things like that, everything was leading to less profit coming if the delivery and the results were to stay the same. But he knew that they'd already been under pressure. So instead of addressing it directly and being a bit braver, maybe with it, he worked around it. So he was taking emails, rewriting them, joining calls that he didn't need to be on, sitting in. There's at least one person on here who, at the moment, as a senior leader, is having to sit in on conversations that one of their managers should be having, and isn't at the moment feeling quite as capable to do it. He was doing the same kind of thing, and he was just kind of quietly filling the gaps and just smoothing things over. And in his head, that was his role as the leader, to be supportive of the team. But what it meant was that the team that worked for him never really saw the standard that he actually wanted. So a few weeks had passed, a few months had gone by, and nothing was changing. And it wasn't because the team were awkward. It wasn't because he had difficult characters in his team. It wasn't that they didn't care about the job and they didn't want to be there and didn't care about the business. It was just because nobody had said that the bar had moved and explained why. So when he finally did raise expectations, it felt a bit sudden to him. And I think that his team were probably a bit stunned and upset, maybe, that he thought that they weren't doing a good job. And that's when he realised that the conversation that he'd avoided hadn't protected morale. It had just put a state of confusion in there. He'd got one set of expectations and they'd got the original expectations. And once he actually sat them down, raised the expectations clearly, calmly, explained the reasoning behind it, um, I think he was quite surprised by the reaction that he got from people. So they weren't defensive, they were just relieved because they now knew what they were supposed to be doing, what good looked like, and could therefore go away and do that. So that was the kind of conversation that we'd gone back and forth on, doing a little bit of coaching with him while we sat in the pub one night, and then catching up with him the following week. How's that gone? What difference has it made? But that's kind of a real life scenario for him. So expectations matter. I want you to imagine, you can close your eyes if you want. I'm not going to do anything weird to you while you've got your eyes closed if you're worried. Nobody's going to come and jump out at you or anything. But I'd like you to imagine having your wider team in a room together, and you just say to them, we're going to go for a 5 mile walk this afternoon. Now, what kind of reaction do you think you'll get from your team? Pop it into chat, take yourself off mute, whatever you want. What kind of reactions are we getting? 5 mile walk this afternoon?
Stunned silence, I would have thought.
Yeah. What do you mean? I'm going to get out from behind my desk. I feel safe here. What else have we got? Not in this weather. Yeah. Okay, some of you have told me it's particularly bad weather where you are. Kerry, you're saying maybe a positive one. And there may be a positive reaction from the whole team because they think, oh, yeah, I like that idea. I'm going to do that. There might be positive reactions from certain members of the team who are more on board than others as well. Is it in my work time, or do I have to give up my lunch period for it? Some are going to love it. Some would want to know why. So tell me more about that then. What are the questions that you're going to get asked? So we've got, is it in my lunch? Do I have to give up my own time for it? But beyond that, they'd
I think
ask
they'd
if I'd
want, yeah, I
lost the
think they'd want
plot.
to know why.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
first of all,
why?
they'd want to know why you're going on this 5 mile walk.
Yeah.
What else might they want to know?
Where we're going on this 5 mile?
Yeah.
Is it coming back here? Are we going 5 miles away?
Yeah. Are we doing a loop, or am I going to be
Yeah,
stranded in the middle of nowhere? Are we all going to the same place?
yeah.
Or are we all just going for a wander? So if you imagine having those people in the room and you say, right, let's determine what direction we're going in. Everybody stand up, close your eyes, and point north. And you're going to walk in that direction. What do you think is going to be the outcome for the team?
Be like a compass point. Everyone be going everywhere.
They'll be all over the place, won't they? But if we're not being, do we get lunch included? That we'll go through a drive-through, but we have to walk through it because we're on foot. Yeah, they're all going to go in different directions. So if expectations, so forget raising expectations for a second, if expectations in the first place aren't really clear, you're going to have the equivalent of what I've just described with we're all going for a 5 mile walk this afternoon. You're going to have people wondering why, maybe not verbalizing it, but think, oh, I'm not on board with that. I don't want to do that today. The equivalent of I don't want to do it in this weather, but I don't want to do it today. Don't fancy that. That's not for me. Don't know why we're doing it. There's no point. And then the ones that are on board setting off in a load of different directions. So you've got some who've never set off in the first place because they're just not going to do it. And you've got others that have set off in a load of different directions, different compass points, as Joe said, and you've not got the outcome that you were looking for. So the expectations need to be really clear before we can even raise them. So it just re-emphasizes the importance of the clarity in that. Oh, that was a bit of random animation on that screen. So people need to know where they're going. And that is one of the strongest drivers of performance and of engagement, of being really clear, clarity of expectations with everybody from your new starter on day one, who needs clarity of expectations in their first couple of days, in their first week, in their first month, during their probation period. And it's only fair that we give that to them. So right from that very new starter to the manager that you've just promoted, who's gone from being a really brilliant member of the team, high performer at doing that, we're landing them into the manager's job overnight and then maybe just leaving them to it. And what they need is really clear expectations of what they're supposed to be delivering in the role that they now do, what they can deprioritize of the things that they did previously, what are now priority areas that they've never had to do before. But those clear expectations are what drives the results. And morale doesn't drop because we've pushed the expectations higher. It pushes because of the feelings it creates in people, them feeling blindsided about it. Well, why on earth is this happening now? It was good enough before. Feeling judged, perhaps. So you don't think I'm doing a good enough job then, so you're just going to raise the bar. Feeling unsupported in whatever it is that we're raising the bar on. Feeling unsure what good looks like. And under pressure as leaders, we quite often either push harder or back off. So if the team's under pressure, and there's a pressurized environment, we've got a need for greater results, we either push harder on them or we think, oh, I don't want to put any more pressure on the team, and we back off. And both of those, neither of them are right, just in kind of black and white, because both of them are increasing noise, and both of those will increase escalation. And by escalation, I mean things coming back to you as a senior leader for you to deal with that you probably wouldn't have had to deal with otherwise. Things maybe needing to be escalated to HR and having to get HR involved in stuff if you've got HR people in your businesses, etc. So, expectations and morale are not opposites. So, we can raise expectations and maintain or even boost morale. And I'm going to prove it to you because I want you to just spend a couple of moments thinking of a time in your past where expectations have been raised, but actually it made you better. So, it made you better at the job that you do now, made you better at the job that you did then. And I'd like you to think about what helped it feel constructive rather than, oh my God, the expectations have gone up. It's like the big barbell in the gym just landing on me and crushing me. So you can share if you like, you don't have to. But I'd love you to think of a time when expectations were raised and it made you better. So what helped it feel constructive was a bonus for completing the task. Nice one. Like it. So it was a tough thing to do, but it was achievable, and you felt rewarded and recognised at the end of it by having that bonus in place for it. Yeah, some good answers coming in there. Being surrounded by other people in the same mindset. An MD going on mat leave and loved the freedom and career progression. Probably felt a bit daunted, I would imagine, when that was first announced and you were told, "Oh, you're in charge," for the foreseeable, I would imagine. I remember being promoted overnight into a training manager role and thinking, oh, I've got massive shoes to fill because the one that we'd had was absolutely outstanding. How am I ever going to be as good as he was? But actually, the feedback from him, he was leaving. The feedback from him beforehand, I believe in you. You can do it. We've got X number of weeks between now and then. This is what I'm going to do with you in the meantime to help you be ready for it. Getting the opportunity to do the job before you got the job. Yeah, nice. Some good examples in there. So good proof that expectations being raised doesn't have to have a dent in people's morale. They're not opposites to each other. It's not like a scale that one goes up and the other one goes down. It can be, but it depends on how we communicate it and how we deal with it. So 3 common traps that I see quite regularly. First one is leaders just being silently frustrated. And what I mean by that is that they're expecting more, but they're not actually communicating that. So they're just hoping that by like telepathy somehow, that people are going to be aware that they should be doing more and that the leader expects more of them. And then when they're not delivering that, just getting frustrated about it. I can think of really easy examples in my house at the minute with 2 teenage boys. And one's away at uni, the other one's saying to me, "Do you wish that I'm the one at uni and the one that is at uni is at home because actually he's easier for you, isn't he?" I couldn't disagree. I didn't verbally, hasten to add, but he had some good thoughts. And I can fall into this trap of that silent frustration that I'm expecting him to do things because I know we've said it before. I expect him to do it, but I'm not necessarily repeating it and reminding him, just get silently frustrated that things haven't been done. But if we do that, people can feel like they're failing because at some point that's going to have to come out. People are going to feel like they're failing but not understand why. So we can't just do the silent frustration. We need to communicate with them. Another really common trap is sudden announcements. Some of us may have been in a situation where senior leaders above us have dictated that we need to announce something to our teams that we've only just found out about. So I think that that's quite a common thing too. And it's just making sure that we take a beat to absorb it and get on board with it before we then start communicating. Otherwise, we have that classic example of don't blame me, it's not my idea, however that might be said. So that sudden announcement might sound like from next week, we're changing how this works. and people feel it's just been imposed on them. There's no collaboration on it. It can create some panic. It creates frustration. That's what creates your pushback. And then the outcome of that is you've got lots of stuff to deal with just by announcing it suddenly. And then the other one is where we're raising the bar, but we're not raising the support that people are getting. So we're expecting more output from them in the same amount of time with the same resources. And what happens with that is that people fall into overwhelm. That does cause the drop in morale because then small issues become a big deal. So they're fed up generally with the fact that the bar's been raised, but then everything else that happens on the back of that, those small issues that normally they deal with absolutely fine, then become a big deal. And those are the things that you then start having to handle. So I want to try and avoid you falling into any of those common traps because they all show up as morale issues and attitude issues, but what they're actually about is perhaps capability in the people that we're expecting to raise the bar a little bit, and communication and how we've communicated it to them. So simple communication lens that I know a lot of you will have come across in the past, and that's just the simple know, feel and do. And this happens to any kind of leadership communication that we're having with anybody. And actually, probably lots of communication, not even just leadership. So when we're communicating something to them, what do they need to know? How do they need to feel? What do they need to do as a result of what we've talked to them about? So just take a beat to think about how that applies to things that you do on a regular basis. And I'm just going to flesh them out ever so slightly. So thinking about the know is what kind of facts do they need to know about? What kind of priorities do they need to know about? What do they need to know about the expectations? What do they need to know about what's changing? What do they need to know about what isn't? So that we don't create as much panic. These things aren't changing, it's just this. When it comes to the feel, how do we want them to feel? I mean, you tell me, when we're communicating something to people, how do we want them to feel? Drop them into chat. How do we want people to feel generally? We want people to feel empowered. We definitely do. Secure. Yeah. That things are clear, that they're involved. We want people to feel confident, clear on expectations. We want them to feel inspired, motivated. Nice. Lots of different things. We want them to feel respected. We want them to feel trusted, motivated, excited, confident. We want them to feel considered. So we want them to feel that we have actually considered how they might feel, how they might react. We want them to feel enabled. Yeah. What we definitely don't want is them to feel judged. We don't want them to feel blindsided by something. And then what do I need them to do needs to be part of that communication too. So what do I need them to decide? What do I need them to act on? What behaviour do I need them to change? What do I need them to take ownership on? So thinking about anything that we're communicating to them under a kind of know, feel and do lens. And if one of those is missing in something that we're communicating to them, we're likely to get some form of confusion. We might get some resistance. We're likely to get some kind of inaction. So if you just communicate, for example, some facts and things that are happening. So this is what's happening in our business. Our costs have gone up, la, 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 la. But we don't acknowledge how that might make them feel or show that we've considered in them, and we don't tell them what we want them to do as a result, nothing's going to change. Other than you've probably inspired some panic in the meantime, people updating the CVs and thinking, I better get myself on some job boards. So we need to make sure that we've got all of them covered. But when we're raising expectations, the risk's even higher. So we need a little bit more structure to it. So this is something that I talk about regularly in the leadership programs that I run, and it's the challenge and support matrix. Those of you who've been, there's quite a few people on the call actually who've been on some form of leadership training with me before. I will have talked to you about something similar to this. It just might not have looked like this. So we're looking at how much support people get and how much they're challenged, how much they're pushed. And if I explain what I mean by support and challenge before we go any further, what support isn't is about us rescuing them. It's not about us softening expectations for them, and it's not about us doing things for people. It's about us giving them the right scaffolding to be able to do their job. So it looks like us listening to them properly. It looks like us showing an interest in them. So Kerry, when we were talking through the example that you gave earlier on about you can't just say, this is how to do it, because you're conscious that might not be the right way to do it now. It's saying, look, we've got this problem that we need to solve. How do we go about doing that? So I've got some ideas, but I want your ideas and showing interest in the kind of things that they come up with. It looks like training and coaching to do something that they're not yet good at or haven't yet done. It's offering guidance when they need it. It's removing obstacles from them that aren't necessary, making it easier and clearing the way for them. It's making our expectations clear with them. It's being available, but not hovering, not micromanaging them. And from their point of view, the question that you're answering for them is, am I backed? Have I got the right support, the right scaffolding while I'm doing this? And coming back to Matt's point earlier on that we want people to feel secure, it's them feeling secure to do it. That it's okay to make a mistake, that it doesn't have to go right the first time. Those are all kind of supportive behaviours. And then if we think about challenge is about us putting unnecessary pressure on people. It's not about us criticising them, so it's not challenging them in that kind of respect. It's not being demanding for the sake of it. And what it does look like is, again, those clear expectations, because they are a challenge measure and a support behaviour. It's asking people to think for themselves and encouraging that. It's encouraging ownership of things, accountability. It is pushing back when standards slip. It's inviting them to stretch beyond what's comfortable and not stepping in too quickly to allow people to fail but feel safe in failing, as I said earlier on. And you're answering the question in that one, am I being expected to step up? And when we're raising expectations, we're raising the bar, we're expecting them to step up. So we need to answer that question for them. So if you've got low support, low challenge, what you're likely to be seeing are things like inconsistent delivery, standards aren't clear, people are doing different things, and you've just got quiet underperformance going on because they've not got the right kind of support, the right kind of framework there to support them in doing the job, and they don't know they're not being pushed on that challenge side. So it's the apathy zone. That word's not mine. It comes from psychological safety and the work by Amy Edmondson, but she calls it the apathy zone. If we increase the support, so we've dialed that up, but we've not dialed challenge up, we've got a comfort zone. And I would imagine quite a few of you on the call probably feel that you've got people who are very firmly in the comfort zone and want to stay there. It's where it feels safe, but performance plateaus there. Leaders might step in and do the stuff that Mark was doing earlier on and trying to compensate. We don't get increased results from people who are in a comfort zone. So we need to dial up the challenge as well. But if we dial up the challenge without the support, we land people in an anxiety zone, panic, morale dips, pushback rises, and all those escalations I mentioned earlier on, those things coming back to you as senior leaders, and perhaps having to get HR type involvement in, those kind of escalations follow when you've got people in that anxiety zone. It's not a nice place for people to be. And where we want them is in the learning zone or the growth zone, where they've got high support, but they've got high challenge. And I've shown this just on a page with 4 boxes. But if you imagine that each of those axes has a scale of 1 to 10, even a 6 out of 10 on challenge and a 6 out of 10 on support lands in that learning and growth zone. So you might already have people in that learning or growth zone that you could dial up even more and get them further into it. So it's clear standards, you've got capability rising in there and ownership increasing. And that's where we want people to be. We want people to be in that learning or growth zone, whether it's the equivalent of the 6 out of 10s or it's an 8 and 9 out of 10 or even a 10 out of 10 for our people who are sat in that quadrant. So it's thinking back on the expectations that you've already got in place and the expectations that you perhaps want to raise and thinking, have I got the right combination of support and challenge in place in order to achieve that and to make it more likely that I'm going to get that out of people? And if you've raised expectations in the past, but perhaps haven't dialed up the support, all we've done is dial up the challenge, what we've perhaps done is put people into the equivalent of the anxiety zone as opposed to in that learning and growth zone where we wanted them to be. So morale doesn't drop because we challenge them. It drops when we increase challenge, but we don't match support. And support, remember what we said, what we looked at on the slide a few minutes ago, support isn't sitting hand-holding somebody every hour of every day. Support is drip feeding those behaviours to them consistently, but not all of the time. So when we're raising expectations, I want to give you more support than that So I want to give you a framework that's really easy for you to take away and put into practice yourself. For the senior leaders on the call, you can put it into practice with your managers. It's something that you can teach your managers to use, and for them to put in place with their team members. And I've used the acronym CARE for it because I think that fits. So first of all, when we're raising expectations, we need to give them context. So we need to anchor that expectation in reality. If we don't explain costs of the business have gone up, for example, then they're not going to understand that and why something else is expected of them. They're just going to think that as senior leaders, we want more profit. No, we don't. We want to maintain the profit, but because the costs have gone up, the results, performance, etc., that people demonstrate to us also has to go up to match it. So anchor that expectation in reality by explaining to them what's happening, why now, what's changed. So what is it that's led to this rise in expectation? And acknowledge. So name how this is likely to land with them. So remember we said earlier on that if they feel considered, then they're more likely to be on board with you. So if we name how that's likely to land with them, and I'm going to go through a few examples of these in a second, then that's more likely to resonate and get the results that you're looking for. So name where you know it's going to add pressure or where they're going to feel it adds pressure. Name what people might worry this says about them. So I'm not saying you're doing a bad job. What I'm saying is we just need more of it. Somebody said earlier on, who was it who said pace? Jess, was that you? You just need more pace. So they're doing a great job. They're delivering things to the quality and the standard that you need. You just need more of it. So we need to find a way for your team to deliver things a little bit more quickly and slickly to be able to do more of it. So you would definitely need that acknowledged piece in there. Otherwise, they might think that you're judging them and thinking that they're doing a bad job. R stands for requirements, and this is just defining things nice and clearly, setting that expectation, the equivalent of we're all walking in this direction for this reason, for this long, maybe not throwing it on them at 12 o'clock, we're going this afternoon in the rain, but defining those requirements. What does good look like now, by when, and to what level? So whatever the measures are that need to be on that. And then E for enable. The other thing, sorry, on requirements I should mention before I go on is how it's going to be reviewed. So what does good look like? When does it need to be delivered by? To what level? And how are we going to measure that and review it? And then the last one is enable. So that's the equivalent of dialing up the support to match the challenge. And that might be as simple as what's being deprioritized. So over the next few weeks, we need to dial up delivery on this, but to free up the time to do that, we're dialing down this. Or I need you as the manager of the team to dial up on these things, but to free you up to be able to do that, I'm taking these things off you. I don't need you to do that meeting. I don't need you to do that report, whatever it might be. So it's what's deprioritized. What shouldn't they worry about? What are they focusing on? What help's available? What training might there be? Who might they be able to shadow to learn how to do that better? How are you going to do the progress review of it? So care, context, acknowledge, requirements, and enable. And let me show you a couple of examples of that in practice. And I'm sure, I'd like you to give me a wave actually as I give you some examples of the ones that resonate. So let's start with a typical example. So maybe you've got a manager spending a lot of time chasing the team members just for updates, for putting things on the CRM, for they might be rewriting messages for them or stepping in when clients are escalating. And that might, Joe's giving me a wave at least. We've got a few waves. You went alone, Joe. A few people joined in as soon as you waved at me. So this is how that might be communicated by the manager who's a bit frustrated with that, saying something on the lines of, I just can't keep chasing you for updates. You need to be more on top of this. Or I can't keep smoothing things over between you and the other person on the team when they kick off because you're not putting stuff on the database. And then they try to do something and find out you've already done it. It's those kind of conversations. Who recognizes those? Yes, definitely some nods. So what we've done with that, if it's communicated like that, the challenge has been dialed up, but the support hasn't changed. So behavior doesn't change as a result of that. With some characters, it can be like water off a duck's back, especially in some of the industry sectors that you work in, it will be water off a duck's back. And in others, it'll put people into that anxiety zone, panic zone, and the performance and results that you were getting out of them might drop. So as opposed to you raising what they're achieving, you might actually achieve a lowering in what they actually deliver. So let's look at what that might look like. Now, these obviously are going to look a bit scripted. So it's using the framework and then putting it into your own words with somebody. So set the context. So we're seeing more client follow-ups and end of week escalations than we should, and all of that's pulling me back into the day-to-day more than I should be. So I know Fridays are already pressured. Client updates can feel like admin rather than value-adding work. But what's really important is that we get these updates on. So from now on, every client needs a clear update by Friday at 3, even if there's no progress on it. I need to see just this is state of play by Friday at 3. And to help you do that, we're just going to have a really short template for it so that it doesn't take too long, because I don't want you to spend lots of time doing it. I just want that quick piece of info on there. So I'll check in after 2 weeks. We'll see what's getting in the way of that, how things are going with it, and assess the level of that working and agree it moving forwards. So it might be a bit more than we've actually got on the slide. So you've set the context, you've acknowledged how that might already feel, you're already pressurized on a Friday. I know that might be why you're not doing it. But this is what needs to happen. And to help that happen, this is what I'm going to put in place. So that's example number 1. Example number 2. We've got quite a few senior leaders on the call. So people who've got managers reporting into you. So this example is managers escalating decisions to you quickly, even when their remit dictates that they should be making that decision. Some more waving. And we might have caused it. So we might have caused it by saying something like, don't worry about it, just run it by me and I'll decide. I've had people say that to me in the past. And then you feel as though you have to run everything by them. So you create a bigger issue than it ever was in the first place. So it gives short-term relief. The decision's made more quickly, but it creates long-term dependency. And as a senior leader, your time just starts looking like the sand going through the egg timer. So this is how you do it instead. I'm being pulled into decisions that sit within your remit. I do know that making these calls can sometimes feel a bit risky. When you bring something to me, I'm expecting you to come to me with a recommendation and some thoughts about it, not just the problem. And for the next few weeks, we'll go through that. We'll make the decisions together to build your confidence in it. So you've empowered them, you've enabled them to do it. You've not just said they've got to do it overnight. You've put a plan in place to make them feel more confident to do it. And what you might also recognise, coming back to what I said a moment ago, is that actually there's loads of things that they started bringing to you because they thought that they should, not because they didn't really know how to make that decision. But as soon as they start coming to you and saying, look, this has happened, this is what I'm thinking we'll do to put that right, and you just say, brilliant, great, go ahead and do it. The more they do that, the more confidence that they've got, and the quicker and more easily you can step away from it. Last one, I've used this example a couple of times. Company costs have increased significantly, but revenue or results, whatever it is that they're generating in your industry sector, perhaps hasn't kept pace with it. So we just need everybody to sell more, or whatever the equivalent is in your industry sector. And I've heard that so many times in recruitment. I hold my hands up, I've probably said it. We just need more. But all we've done is raise the pressure and probably increase a bit of anxiety in certain characters in our team and probably not got any change in behaviour out of any of them. So instead, more context. So over the last year, our costs have increased across things like salaries, systems, overhead, and revenue just hasn't grown at the same rate. It's just not sustainable. So I know it lands at a time when everybody already feels a bit stretched, and it's definitely not about lack of effort. But what we need is some stronger focus on pipeline quality. We need some earlier value conversations and clearer ownership of conversion, not just activity. I know this one's very sales driven for those of you who are not in a sales industry. So forgive me on that, but I know there's a lot of people on here that this will definitely resonate with. So what we're going to do is review pipeline weekly. We're going to deprioritize some of that low value work. So if we review the pipeline, we'll identify the stuff that's low value. We're just going to put that to one side and focus on the stuff that's more likely to result in money coming in. And we'll support confidence around pricing and the client conversations around that through some training. So we've given them the context, we've acknowledged how that might make them feel, but we've been very strong on what the requirement is and that expectation that's been raised, and then we've shown them how we're going to empower and enable them to do it. So, I said earlier on, you still might get pushback. But it's a reframe on the pushback that pushback gives you information. So if you've used that and you're still getting pushback, you need to look at why. Because chances are it's because something's not quite strong enough or hasn't been included, it's been missed out. So 3 most common types of pushback, the ones that I've come across most regularly, and when I'm running sessions like this with teams, the ones that when we brainstorm, how many different things can you think of that you might get as pushback? These are the most common ones that come out. I'm too busy. And if somebody's saying to you, I'm too busy, thinking back through care, it's probably enable that was missing, and I'll come back and talk about that in a bit more detail. I don't know how. Maybe it's enable that's missing. So it might be a genuine training or coaching issue, or it could be I don't know how because they don't really understand what's required of them. And this used to be fine, in which case it's probably context that wasn't strong enough. They've not understood that. We might have wanted to protect them a little bit from the realities and not been strong enough in what the context is and what's led to us needing to do it. So coming back and just exploring enable a little bit more. If it's that I'm too busy, it probably is enable that's missing. And the way that I'd tackle that is to validate it. So I'd sit down and explore that person's workload with them honestly. I'd look for inefficiencies in what they're doing. I'd look for rebalancing. What tasks are they doing that somebody else should be doing? What are they doing that they shouldn't be doing and nobody should be doing at all? What are they wasting the time with or spending effort on that they shouldn't be? And if there are things that need fixing, I'd set about fixing them. I also would reaffirm the importance of the expectation and why it's there and agree the support that's needed in order to help them do it. So if it's a genuine I'm too busy, some of them it's just a fob off. I'm too busy. Where on earth do you think I'm going to find the time to do that? I haven't got enough time in the day to do what I'm doing already. But you know that they're willing to spend 40 minutes just looking at each other's photos on a screen from the holiday that they've been on. And they're quite willing to go out for the equivalent of the 5 mile walk, not at their lunchtime. And that there are times of day where they're wasting some time. So the I'm too busy might not fly. But if you are validating it and exploring it honestly, so you need to approach it with that objective viewpoint rather than they're definitely not too busy. So actually map out days with them, talk me through what you do, talk me through what you normally tackle on a Monday and how long each of those different things takes, talk me through the last week, and do it in a really objective, not judgmental way. You might find that there's things that are inefficient that can be done better, things that you could take away, you didn't realize they were doing, and might be able to fix it in that way. If you validate it and actually it's not valid, they're not too busy, they're genuinely not, and you're able to point out times that they've got where they could be fitting more effort in, then you reaffirming the importance and just agreeing any support that might be a slight tweak in that. If it's the I don't know how, I'd argue this is probably the easiest one to fix because it's either it's a skill, not will issue. So it's a I don't know how, or the requirements weren't clear, in which case you need to reconfirm what the requirements are and make sure that that's understood. But if it's a skill, not a will, we offer training, we offer shadowing, we offer coaching, we break the expectation down into milestones for them, and we encourage them to take the first small step and get on the way of doing it. So I'd say I don't know how is actually the easiest one to fix, but maybe I would say that because of what I do. But I genuinely think it is. It's much easier to turn around a skill issue than it is somebody's willingness to do it. And this used to be fine. If that's the response, then the context has been missing or not strong enough. So explain the drivers behind it, reinforce that standards evolve. So doing 50 of those in a week previously was enough because we were getting this conversion rate. But now that the conversion rate is this, which I acknowledge is because of these factors, we need to put more in at the beginning to get the same amount out. And then involve them in shaping improvements to it. So invite them to work with you to go through a process, perhaps, and work out why the process isn't quite working as it used to. This perhaps comes back to some of the things that Kerry was saying, actually looking at what works together. If you figure out that actually it's a will issue, not a skill issue, then you come back to that conversation and consideration of are they actually the right fit for the team and the business. So I'm sure you've come across the analogy of the company bus, and that people who get on the bus are the people with the right values, behaviours, the right fit for the organisation, right type of person. And then sometimes we identify they're not quite on the right seat on the bus. And the first thing we should do is shift them to another seat, consider if there's another seat that is fitting for them. So if it's a will issue, not a skill issue, we really do need to consider, are they the right fit? They might have been the right fit a few years ago, but may not be the right fit now. But that's an even deeper conversation, and certainly not something I can tackle in 5 or 6 minutes that I've got left. So some key messages from what we've covered. Most people want to do a good job. I've not come across very many people, have come across some, but I've not come across very many people in the whole of my career who want to come to work and deliberately do a bad job. So most people want to do a good job. And when expectations don't land, it's usually about clarity and support, not about the effort that somebody's willing to put in. Morale drops when we dial up the challenge, but don't dial up the support. So if we want to keep teams in the growth zone, we have to lift both together and maintain both together. Being really clear around expectations reduces friction, reduces escalation, those senior conversations, those HR and more serious conversations, and it gives people confidence to decide, act, and take ownership. And if we use know, feel, and do as a lens for most of our leadership communications, and we use care specifically for raising expectations, then we put ourselves in a good place. So I mentioned earlier on that most of what I've talked about today is drawn from the leadership program that I do with most of my clients. And we've got people on the session today who've gone through, who've worked with me on different versions of this, previous guises of this, etc. But the program's all about building confident, capable leaders who are in place to deliver results through others, because that's why we promote people into manager positions, to get the results from their teams. What that looks like, really briefly, is 6 days. Leadership starts with you as our first day, and that's building people's self-awareness. I usually use DISC with teams to help them do that, to look at building their awareness of how their behaviour, how their decisions, how their communication shape the team around them. And that, even on day one of working with people for a few days, usually results in some different things happening. Day 2 is about leading the individual, and it's removing that one-size-fits-all leadership style. So it's helping people to understand that people have got different needs, people have got different motivations and different levels of experience, and then adapting what they're doing as the manager or leader of that individual to what that person needs to get better results from them. Feedback that builds performance is day 3. So we're avoiding or removing, avoided or delayed conversations. So the people will more confidently handle feedback, handle course correction conversations that they need to have with people, and deal with problems while they're still small. After day 3, there's a one-to-one coaching session. So everybody working through that in a group gets a one-to-one coaching session with me to look at the challenges that they've had, look at what they've done with it already. So for the senior leaders on the call, it also helps with accountability, making people are actually embedding some of what they're learning, and also helps me to recognise, because I'm working with them in that very personalised way, helps me to recognise the people who are perhaps struggling with it a little bit more than others, and flag that to you as the senior leader, that they might need a bit more support. Day 4 is all about removing managers being the bottleneck, essentially. So delegating clearly to people, coaching to build capability, creating a stronger team that's less reliant on the manager. Day 5 is what a lot of managers find tricky, balancing the different responsibilities that they've got. So balancing having to do their own individual tasks and perform individually with the needs and the dynamics of the wider team they're now responsible for, dealing with prioritisation. And what comes out of that is better collaboration, better accountability from the manager to do the job that they're in situ to do, because they feel more capable and confident of doing it. And then the last day of the program is about building the habits and behaviours of high-performing teams and their leaders. So building the right habits within their team, but making sure that they're demonstrating the right habits and behaviours too, and that they've got the right kind of rhythms in place to support performance and get more consistent results out of people. And then we bookend that with another one-to-one coaching session a few days after we finish that last day, again in a similar one similar way to the first day, to look at the challenges that they've been having, how they're getting on with it, make sure they are doing something with it, if we talk in very simple terms. And then again, it gives me the ability to come back to you as a senior leader to let you know, here's somebody that I think still might need a little bit of extra support, maybe a couple more one-to-one sessions just to really embed the learning that they've taken away from the programme. So as I mentioned, I've worked through various guises of this over the last few years, done versions of it that have fitted the needs of different clients. And I chose this quote recommendation. Caroline's actually on the call today, so I did check in with her earlier on to make sure she was happy for me to share this one. But this is what she said after the work that I did with her team. And again, quite a few members of her team are on the call today too. So maybe acting as my cheerleaders today, you never know. But that's what she said after the work that I did with that team. Emma's asking, how long does a course take in total? I'd recommend over a 3-month period. So it's 6 days plus 2 one-to-ones. I'd recommend doing one of two things, and it depends on where your people are. If all your people are in one place, I would always recommend 1 day a fortnight for 3 months. That gives them enough time back at the desks in between to get on with their day-to-day job while they're still learning and put some of the stuff into practice, and doesn't drag it out over too long. I have worked with some clients where I've done it over 6 to 9 months, and I think that you lose some momentum. So if there was a specific reason a client wanted me to stretch it out, then I would do, but I would be flagging you lose some momentum by doing that, because you have maybe 1 day in the month and then you forget about it for the month. Whereas if you're doing 1 day a fortnight, you're coming back and building on it. And then the only time I'd recommend something slightly different to that is if we're bringing a group of people together who are geographically spread, and they have to travel to come to the day. I'd just put 2 days back to back and do it 2 days in a month and a month till the next one. That's how I would normally do it. If there's any other questions, fire them at me. Quite happy to answer those. But if that has sparked some thoughts and perhaps made you think about support that your team need, might not be the whole program that they need. It might be, but it might not be the whole program that they need. I've mentioned DISC as well. If you think that there are things in your team where the team aren't working as effectively together as they could be, communication might be a bit stilted, there might be a bit of friction, a bit of kind of them and us maybe going on, then a DISC team effectiveness day could really help with that kind of situation. But if you'd like to have a chat about that, there's a QR code on the screen. I'll make sure that the link to it comes out if the QR code isn't your bag, but the link to that will come out with the recording as well. But book yourself in. I've made sure deliberately that I've got some time over the next week or so to be able to have conversations with people who need me. We'll talk about the challenges that you're having at the minute. And I will look at how I can potentially support you through that. That might not be you coming to me and saying, we're having these challenges, we need some support, we've got budget now, we've got time, we've agreed we're going to do it. That's unrealistic. That might be the case for you, but for a lot of people it potentially isn't. I might have just sparked some thoughts today. It might be that I can give you some things in the meantime, or it's a conversation that we can pick up again further down the line, but let's talk about it and find out what's going on at the minute. I will be sharing the recording afterwards. That'll come out by the end of the day, but it will be late afternoon by the time I get that through to you. If there's anything specific that you want to talk about, or you just want to dig in a little bit more detail, then just drop me a line about that. But thank you very much indeed for taking the time. Sorry, I've run over by a couple of minutes. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I hope you found it valuable, and I will speak to you all soon. Have a productive afternoon.
Bye all.
Thanks, Joe. James, I'm going to stop the recording because I don't know whether you're hanging around because you want to talk or just can't find the button to get out.